Hi everyone, I'm Julie and I'll be leading through this evening's Gentle Friday yoga. This is our kind of way to cap off the end of one year and move into the next. I'm just going to move this back a little bit. Okay, so for my class, I always like to recommend having a couple of yoga blocks on hand and then also water, just in case we're not going to be moving super quickly, we're not going to be moving for super long. It is just an hour. This is a beginner class, but I always like to encourage that. That being said, I want to say a little bit about who I am, who Hands to Heart Center is, what we do, why we're important, all that good stuff. So let me start with Hands to Heart Center. So Hands to Heart Center is a nonprofit based out of Greater Boston, and we are focused on providing yoga to underserved communities that deal with things like poverty, trauma, and addiction. We are all over the city. We are particularly well known through the Boston Public Library. Shout out to the BPL for letting us work with them and for hosting us. I know I've been teaching with the BPL for a little while now, probably over a year. So I am a CYT, a community yoga teacher. So we do this completely for free. There's a cat there. So it is free to anyone. Again, doing the beginner classes is a great way to involve tons of different people, regardless of your skill, ability, etc. Cool. So who am I? I'm Julie. I teach Hatha style yoga. So Hatha style yoga is different than Vinyasa. Most people hear of a yoga class and it's normally a Vinyasa class, which means it's usually pretty fast moving. There's sometimes some heat and it can be pretty challenging. So Hatha yoga is kind of the opposite of that. So it can definitely be challenging, but it's more focused on being comfortable as the participant rather than trying to fit your body into something that you think it should look like. So that being said, Hands to Heart Center asked me to teach because I do teach Hatha yoga, which is nice. It's called Sun and Moon yoga. So basically it's focused on balancing out the body, balancing out your mind. You'll see some poses that'll be held for a little bit longer, some poses that might be a little bit shorter, a lot of emphasis on breathing. In fact, our class agenda is as follows, if you'd like to follow along. We always start with this little intro. I like to kind of break it down. From there, we move into a pranayama, which is a breathing exercise. After the breathing exercise, we move into some standing poses, which is through our nice little sun salutation, moon salutation. Today it's going to be a sun salutation because it is a little colder. We need some warming energy. From there, we move into standing asana, asana translating literally to pose. From there, we move into seated asana, supine, so laying on your back, and then we end everything with a shavasana. So that being said, if there's anything that does not feel right in your body, if anything bothers you, isn't quite what you're looking for, I would encourage you to modify it or skip it entirely. One of the great things about doing yoga this way virtually is that we can kind of indulge our body with whatever it's looking for. You don't have to worry about someone else seeing what you're doing. You don't have to worry about an instructor coming around and touching you. It's quite literally you in your space. I'm just going to take a sip of water. I see we have a couple people that joined us. So that being said, for the first thing we'll do, right as we settle into our practice, I would encourage you to, like I said, grab yoga blocks. These are my little travel yoga blocks. So I like to keep them near me just in case I need a little bit of an extra push in a pose. For example, if my body feels particularly tight or cold, it might be nice to use the yoga block as a support. Again, water, always encouraged. Feel free to stop, pause, whatever you'd like to do to grab a sip of water. And finally, this sounds kind of weird, but I would encourage you to have a tissue with you for our first breathing exercise because it will kind of get everything flowing. So keeping that in mind, it's a good one for the winter. If you've been sniffling a lot, you will notice that you will drip a little bit. So definitely keep that in mind. We'll be doing this breath for 3, maybe 4 minutes. So it can be helpful if you do have something there. So before we start, let's just settle into our Nice little posture here, kind of noticing where your shoulders fall. If you're someone like me who holds a lot of tension in your shoulders, maybe rolling them away, maybe straightening out through your spine. You might even decide to sit on a yoga block. That is totally up to you. It can be nice to kind of elevate your hips away from the rest of your legs if that's comfortable. Either way. Welcome in a little bit of movement here. And this is just your time to kind of set an intention, decide if there's something you'd like to focus on today. If nothing comes to mind, I can offer you my intention of being present. This year has been very emotionally draining for many of us, if not all. So I would encourage you to give yourself some time to be present and similarly to let things go. So we'll jump right in. Our first breathing exercise, first and only I should say, is called Nadi Shodna, and this is something that is pretty well known within the yoga community. It's one of those breaths that you see it once and you think, oh, that's really funky, and then you do it and you're like, oh, okay, that feels really good. This is a good one. So we'll jump right in. So Nadi Shodna literally means alternating nostril breathing. So it's a pretty fluid motion, although I will say it does feel kind of weird at first when you first do it. So that being said, I'll do it one time first, and then we'll do it together a couple of times. So what you're going to do is raise. I usually use my right hand over here just because I'm right hand dominant. It's a little bit easier for me. And I'm just going to kind of prep my ring finger and my thumb. And those are going to be used to close off either nostril. So I'm going to try to talk it through before I cover my mouth so that you can hear me projecting. So from here, I'm going to start on the right side today. So I'm going to come over to my thumb on my right side. Is going to close off my right nostril. I'll take an inhale through the left. Hold it and close off with my ring finger. Exhale through the right. So that's one side. So basically if you can kind of think of it like inhaling all the way up, exhaling out and backwards. It helps me to think of that as a very visual person. Like I said, it does kind of look weird. It can feel weird the first couple of times, but once you get going with it, it totally clears out your sinuses, totally wakes you up. I think it's a really great breathing exercise for the winter, and what better way to say get out of here 2021 than by literally forcing it out of our nostrils. So here we go. You're welcome to try it with me. You're welcome to watch a couple of times. I'll do maybe 2 rounds, and then you're free to jump in. You can jump in now if you'd like. Okay, so here's my arm at this nice little right angle here. So I come in and I bring my finger to my nose. So I'm going to start by covering my right nostril. Inhale through the left. Close off my left. Open up my right. Now from here, I'm going to inhale again through the right. Close off the right. Exhale through the left. Inhale through the left. Close off the left. Exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Close off the right. Exhale through the left. Hold it for a second here. Check in with your body. Like I said, it will get your sinuses moving, so that's totally normal if you feel a little bit of moisture there. I know I definitely do. We'll do it for maybe 2 more rounds. The 2 more rounds will probably just go right, left, right, and then right, left, right again. So 2 more rounds. Again, you're welcome to follow along. You're welcome to completely ignore me and take a whole Shavasana for this entire class. It's up to you. Anyway, here we go. So my arm up to the right. Like some teachers kind of call this like goal posting your arms. I don't love that. I think it's more like a cactus. So here we go. Inhale here. Just to settle in. Exhale. All right, then I'm going to bring my right thumb to my right nostril. Close that off. Inhale through the left. Exhale, close off the left. Exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Close that off. Exhale through the left. 1 more round. Inhale through the left. Close off through the left. Exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Close off the right. Open up the left. Exhale. And 1 breath to kind of get it all out. Whew. Okay. Good start. So you might have felt a little bit of heat in that exercise. The point of that breath is to kind of get that down-flowing energy out of your headspace before you jump into a practice. That being said, if you're too in your head about it, if you're thinking about it too much, it can be very, very easy to be like, okay, right, left, and get confused. Not the point of what we're doing. The point is literally to be focused on a breath and to mindfully be going through the movement. So that being said, I'm going to encourage you to come up into a tabletop position. And we'll start with just a little simple vinyasa. So as always, I like to turn to the side so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. From here, like I said, here's my little tabletop posture. Super easy, super natural for me. If I wanted to, I could probably balance my water bottle in the middle of my back and it wouldn't fall. A great way to think about not rounding your spine, not curling your spine, just staying completely neutral like tabletop. So from here, inhale and drop your belly, look forward. Exhale, round and curl, cat pose. Inhale, drop your belly again. Looking forward. Exhale, round and curl, cat pose. So it's pretty simple how the inhalation, exhalation works in movement with your breath. That being said, if you'd like to add in some wrist circles here, or kind of lean back onto your knees, little child's pose, whatever you'd like to do, feel free to give yourself that. This is your practice, and I'm just here to facilitate. Inhale, gaze forward, drop your belly. Exhale, round and curl. Inhale, look forward, drop the belly. Exhale, round and curl. Inhale, come to neutral spine. So we'll add a little something onto this to make it more of a vinyasa. So we've been kind of doing that curl and crouch kind of deal. But this time I'm going to invite you to actually add in a downward facing dog at the end of your breath sequence. So here we are in tabletop. Inhale, drop the belly, look forward. Exhale, round and curl. Inhale, look to your palms, a little bit different this time. Exhale, curl the toes, lift up through downward facing dog. First downward facing dog of class, you're welcome to pedal out the legs. Maybe nod your head yes, shake your head no. Whatever feels good for right now. Inhale, look forward, come down to tabletop. Okay, so there's our little vinyasa. Take that as you will, take that with your own breath sequence. So if that looks a little bit different, maybe faster or slower than mine, that's totally fine. Keeping in mind that you want to stay one breath to one movement. So here we go. So here's our tabletop. I'm going to inhale and drop my belly. Exhale to round and curl. Inhale to look forward, kind of just noting where my hands are. Exhale, curling the toes, lifting the hips up and away. Downward facing dog. Inhale, look forward if you're coming with me. Set those knees back down to the mat. Inhale, drop the belly. Exhale, round and curl. Inhale, spot the hands. Exhale, curl the toes, lift up, downward facing dog. And feel free to take these poses for as long as you'd like. I'm going to stay a minute here, just a second. Exhale, let everything go. I'm just going to come down, take a seat for a second, noticing how we're feeling. About 15 minutes into class, just checking in with the body, noticing if anything feels tight, if anything feels stilted, if anything feels like you're holding it back. We'll take a quick little breath here. This is a breath you're welcome to use at any point during class. I'm going to press my palms together and rub them as quickly as I can to create a little bit of friction. Once I feel like I have enough heat, I'm going to inhale and close off my eyes. So I'm quite literally closing off one of my senses to be a little bit more aware of my other four. whether that means you start to hear things a little bit more distinctly, maybe you sink into your mat a little bit, whatever it is, that's fantastic. On your next exhale, you can start to peel your hands away from your eyes. Slowly, slowly, maybe send that energy away. Checking in, taking a second here. As I said in our intro, this is very much not a vinyasa class. You will have moments where I'll be talking directly to you, asking you how everything feels, asking you to check in with your body. So please take those as necessary. Remember that this is very much a class for you, and I'm just here to facilitate and to offer the space. So please use me as you will. All right, I'll meet you standing. All right, and as mentioned before, we'll do our little half of a namaskar as we move into that kind of sun salutation-esque area. This is how we start off. So we're going to start with our feet about hip-width distance apart, maybe a little bit wider. That is up to you. Exhale and letting my arms kind of fall down by my sides here. Same thing, rolling my shoulders back. Exhaling. I'm just going to turn to the side. You don't have to turn to the side. This is just so it's easier for you to see. Inhale, reaching my arms out to the side, up overhead. Exhale and folding all the way over so that my head hangs heavy. My hamstrings feel particularly tight today, so I'm going to take a big bend in my knees. Inhale up halfway, find calves or shins. It's up to you. On your next exhale, you will let that go. Let your head hang heavy again. Find your next inhale, arms reach out to the side and up overhead. Reverse swan dive. Exhale, hands come down through heart center. So we'll do that sequence 2 more times. Just that little half of a namaskar, quite literally means Ardha Namaskar, half of a namaskar. Feel free to be linking your breath to movement. If that's just not happening for you, that's fine too. All right, so here we go. Again, I'm turning to the side so you can see me better. Setting up my space, setting up my breath, noticing if I'm kind of rushing, noticing if I'm just like jumping from pose to pose rather than actually breathing. We don't want to be doing that. We don't want to be doing that in my class. All right, inhale, swan dive all the way up. Exhale, fold over the legs, hinging at the hips, if you will. I'm going to grab my yoga blocks because my hamstrings are very tight. Exhale, folding all the way over. If this is where you can get to right now, that's fantastic. It's totally up to you. Inhale, find shins or thighs, flat back. Exhale and fold down one more time. Maybe you take a big, generous bend in your knees. Find that next exhale. Inhale, arms come out to the side, reverse swan dive, lifting all the way up to the top of your inhale. Exhale, we'll jump right back into it, folding over all the way. Finding those blocks if that is helping you. Letting the head hang heavy. Pedaling out the legs. Maybe shaking your head, whatever feels best for you. Inhale, come up, shins or thighs. I'm going to pick thighs this time and feel that nice flat spine. I notice myself kind of leaning back. I'm just going to kind of reset my weight so that I have even weight on the 4 corners of my feet. Exhale and fold. Inhale, arms come out to the sides and reach all the way up overhead. Exhale, come down to meet me in a seated position on your mat. I'm going to sit myself a little bit differently this time, so I'm going to sit on top of my knees. Again, just a little break for breath. Per usual in my class, it's pretty hallmark of every class that I teach. We always stop for some breath, for some check-in. So now that we're here, maybe you start to notice that your body is getting a little bit warmer. And so this breath is super relevant, super important and appropriate for this moment in class. So that being said, This one also looks a little weird, but once you do it, it feels really good. So I'd encourage you to offer that grace. So you're going to inhale like you're sucking in through a straw or using your tongue to curl your tongue if you can do that. I cannot, so I'll be inhaling like I'm sucking in through a straw. So that being said, on the exhale, you will just breathe normally through your nose. So and my nice little, and make sure I have enough space through my shoulders. We're not really moving too much in this one, but it can be nice to have a little bit of area to kind of press off of if you feel like you need to make yourself taller at all. So here we go. I'm going to close my eyes to help me focus a little bit more. I'll inhale as like I'm sucking in through a straw. Once I reach the top of my inhale, I will flip it out into my nose and exhale. Naturally, my head kind of elevates and depresses a little bit, specifically my chin. If that happens, that's totally fine. It's kind of just like a style choice that I tend to fall into, but it really is up to you, whatever feels good for your body. So let's try that. We'll do maybe 6 rounds of it, just as a way to cool our body down when we're getting into the pretty quick moving Namaskar sequences that I talked about earlier in class. So here we go. Inhale, like sucking through a straw or curling your tongue. Flip it through your nose and exhale. Inhale again. Flip through your nose and exhale. And 4 more times. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale. 2 more rounds here. Inhale through your straw. And exhale. Last one. Inhale like in through a straw. And exhale. Taking a second here, noticing that this breath literally is, like I said, a cooling breath. So that being said, you may feel like you have like a little bit of a cooler sensation down the midline of your body. That is pretty on par with how the breath should feel. I like that one, especially in the summer. It can be really easy to do. Now that we're all wearing masks all the time, you can do that in public and no one's going to look at you weird because they can't see, so which I think is fantastic. Anyway, I'm going to meet you in a standing position and we will jump into our full Namaskar. Again, blocks welcome as necessary. All right, so before we jump in, I just wanted to point out earlier we did the vinyasa where we started with cat-cow and then we added a nice little downward facing dog. We do have downward facing dog in this next sequence. We don't have cat-cow. If that's something you would like to add on, you're more than welcome to. Just keep in mind that we'll probably be moving a little bit slower. So it might be a little bit of a longer cat-cow, which is always fine by me. All right. Okay. Setting up your space. Feet are hip-width distance apart. I'll turn to face you so you can see for a second. Prepping for our first step in this sequence, which is the same thing that we did in our half of a Namaskar. So we'll literally be doing that little swan dive into a forward fold. So keeping that in mind, I have my blocks in front of me should I choose to use them. Inhale, arms come up overhead. Whew. Exhale, I'm folding over, hinging over my legs, using my blocks here so that I'm not overexerting myself. Inhale, lift up halfway, thighs or shins, it's up to you, flat back here. And here's where it changes a little bit. So instead of just going right back down into that forward fold, you're going to create a nice little downward facing dog shape. So quite literally, step your hips back, step your feet back all the way, lift the hips to the ceiling, downward facing dog. Here's a moment where you could easily come down onto your knees and do a little cat-cow pose. Either way, here we are in downward facing dog. Inhale, starting on the right leg. I'm going to just swing my right foot between my palms letting my back knee touch the floor, and a nice little low lunge on the right side. Noticing how that feels in my body, just taking 1 minute, 1 breath here, curling my back toe, sending the right foot back. Downward facing dog again. This time we will swap out and use the left foot. So same thing, your palms will be framing the left foot, stepping through, dropping that right knee. Notice how that feels on your hip flexors. It's a little bit tight for me, I'm noticing on this side. Taking 1 second of breath, curling the toe. This time, instead of stepping backwards, you're going to send that right toe forward, so you'll step into a forward fold. Nice little forward fold here. Inhale, arms up to the side. Lift all the way up. So that was one side. We'll do left, right, right, left. We'll probably do it twice on each side. So now that we have the sequence in your mind, we can move a little bit faster. So here we go. All right. Even standing pose, hips a little bit more than, or excuse me, feet a little bit more than hips with distance. Just enough where it's comfortable, where you don't feel like you're going up and down and losing control. Inhale, arms come out wide overhead. Exhale and fold over all the way. Forward fold here. Inhale, flat back, shins or thighs. Exhale, here's where it's different. Remember, we're not going back into the forward fold. We're going into a downward facing dog. Stepping the hips back. Pedaling out the legs. Maybe looking forward between your palms. This time, you'll pull the left foot between the hands, dropping that back knee. Finding an inhale. Exhale, curl the back toe. Downward facing dog once more. Notice we are moving a little bit faster. Inhale, look forward. Exhale, step the right foot between the palms. Drop the back knee. Low lunge. This time, instead of stepping back, we're stepping forward, so we're moving forward. Inhale, send that left toe forward. Forward fold. Woo, at the front of your mat. Exhale, let your head hang heavy. Maybe bend your knees. Inhale, arms out over to the side. And exhale. Option to take water if necessary. So that was one full round. We'll just do one more round of that. Now that you feel I feel a little bit of heat in my body. I don't know about you, but I definitely, once I start that sequence, I notice I feel a little bit more ready to move. My body is always a little bit more ready to join class. All right, let's do it one more time on each side. Equal standing pose. This is also called your mountain pose. Whew. Inhale, my arms are reaching out wide to the side and up overhead. Exhale and fold forward, hinging at the hips. Reaching for my blocks because it makes me feel better. Inhale to lift up halfway. I'm just going to keep my fingertips on my blocks this time. Exhale, step back through downward facing dog. A little bit different than the sequence in half of our namaskar. Last time we started with the left. This time we'll start with the right. Inhale, send that left foot forward between your palms. Drop the back knee. One breath, one movement. Exhale, step the right toes back to meet the left. Hips go high to the sky. Maybe pedal out your knees. Inhale, step that left toe between the palms. Drop that back knee. One breath, one movement. This time, watch your head if you're in front of a wall because we're stepping forward. Exhale, curl that back toe. Big step forward. Woo. Forward fold at the top of your mat. Feel free to take another second here. Inhale, arms come out wide and up overhead. Exhale, we'll fall right back down, hinging with the hips. Inhale, shins or thighs. I'm going to go with thighs this time. Nice flat back here. Exhale, step it back, downward facing dog. You know where we're going. We've done it before. Inhale, step that left toe between the palms. Back knee drops to the mat. Inhale here. Exhale, curl that back toe, step back, downward facing dog. Inhale, look forward, right toe comes between the palms, drop that back knee. Inhale, one breath to one movement. This time we're stepping forward so that our back toe meets the right. Inhale, arms out wide. Woo. All right, I promise that's the end of our sequence. Take a breath. Okay, so now that we've done our Namascars, we're moving into our standing asana. Just a reminder, asana literally just translates to pose. So if you hear someone say, one that's really popular is Adho Mukha, which is downward facing dog, and you always hear asana at the end, which just means pose. All right, we'll start with a nice little tree pose. One of my favorites because it's one of the easier ones to do, but it's also feels really good in your body. So let's come to the middle of our mat. We started on the right for pretty much all of class, so let's continue that. So I'm going to send all of my weight into my right leg. I'm going to let my left toe kind of sweep into the inner edge of my right foot here. This is like a kickstand maneuver. You can easily kind of slide your foot up your leg here. Just make sure you're not landing on your knee. You can come up to your mid-thigh. I think for today I'm going to stay right on my thigh there. I'm just making sure that we're not putting the foot directly against the knee. Our knees are not supposed to bend that way, right? My palms are coming together. This feels really good for me. I just like being aware of my energy. And I'm not like sitting into this pose. I definitely feel like I'm still working. I'm not just chilling. I'm making sure I'm actually putting in some work here. If I ever feel like, ooh, this probably doesn't make me feel the most secure, the most steady, I can drop a level, as I like to think of it, and modify just a little bit. I'm going to inhale and raise my arms out to Cactus Pose. It's another way to kind of take up some space, feel some energy. Exhale, coming back to prayer pose, as we call it. Exhale, coming back into that little kickstand. And resetting. This time we'll do it on the left side. So same thing, notice where you went with modifications for the right side. If that's something you'd like to change, if that's something you'd like to go a step further, you are more than welcome to. As always, like I said at the beginning of our class, if something isn't feeling good for you, feel free to modify it or take it out entirely. All right, so starting to send the weight into our left leg this time, pulling the right toe to the outer edge of the left. Noticing that kickstand, maybe noticing the difference in your balance on one side versus the other. I'm going to inhale and lift. Maybe I'll go up 2 levels. Maybe I'll put my foot right there by my thigh. Seeing if I feel steady or not, seeing if I feel like I'm kind of overexerting. Maybe I'll go down a level just to my shin. Wherever I am, I'm still in a balancing posture. Even if you stay just on one toe, it is still a balancing posture. It's still going to be a challenge. As humans, we walk on 2 feet, right? So being on one foot should be a challenge. It should feel intimidating, no matter what level you go to. Inhale, arms come up to cactus. Taking another second here before we kind of unwind. Exhale, bringing those palms back into prayer. Taking that right toe down to the floor, down to the mat. Nice little reset here. Opportunity to grab water if you'd like. Moving into our next standing pose. This will actually be our last standing pose. From here, we'll kind of move into a little bit of a different kind of pose. So from here, I have my hips a little bit further than hip width distance. I'm actually going to increase that like an inch or so on both sides. I'm going to take my right toes and point them to the wall. And then I'll take a nice big bend in this front knee. Here's my nice little setup for Warrior 2. What else do we need here? Arms. I'm not so focused on whether or not my heel and my left toe are lining up. It's just not really something I want to keep an eye on because it feels really good and feels really strong this way. And if I start to kind of maneuver them differently, I feel like I lose a little bit of my strength there. Noticing if I feel okay. Okay, I feel good. My hands come to a prayer pose. Inhale here. Exhale, my arms reach out to the sides, and I'm going to look over my right fingertips. A nice fun challenge here could be a little bind. So maybe you reach around your waist with your left hand. Maybe you go into a full bind. Maybe you lean forward and reach around to kind of grab that palm. Either way, that is up to you. Wherever you are, you're going to keep that nice 90-degree bend in your front knee. So you should feel really strong. You should feel like you're putting in some work here. A couple more breaths here, maybe 2 more breath sequences. Inhale, I'm going to come out of this little knee bend here, turn my toes to face my computer. I'm sure for you that might be facing the wall, depending on how you have your mat set up. This time I'm going to turn onto my left side. So my left toes are going to face the wall here. Nice big bend in my front knee, just to kind of settle into the pose. Same thing. I took a little bit of time settling in on the right side, so I'm going to make sure I do that on the left as well. Finding the place where I feel supported. Not so much where I'm in my flexibility, but just the place where it feels pretty natural, where I'm also doing a little bit of work. We all have the point where our flexibility can kind of take us and we can just hang out here all day. You want to pull back a little bit from that point and find the place where you're actually working. My hands come to prayer. Exhale, I lift my arms up to the sides, and I'll be looking over my left fingertips this time. Again, opportunity to grab half of a bind here, so reaching behind your waist here with your right arm, and then maybe you want to duck down and complete that bind. Either way, it's up to you. Also being aware if the bind isn't for you, remembering that we can modify it as necessary, but it doesn't really matter what we look like, it just matters how we feel in the poses. Next exhalation, you can kind of start to turn your toes to face the front. We'll go into our last kind of standing pose. It's kind of like an in-between pose. This is just a wide-legged forward fold. I like to start with my hands on my sacrum, which is the flat part of your spine. I'm going to inhale, exhale, and fold forward. Wherever I land here, my palms can land as well. If I'd like to reach for my ankles, maybe that will feel good instead. Whatever it is, taking the grace for that. Again, always the opportunity to use a yoga block or 2. This is just a great way for me to kind of open up my spine and not crunch in on myself. A couple deep breaths. Maybe you move your knees. Maybe you bend one knee and then the other. A little bit of an alternating kind of exercise there. That also feels good to just stay in this pose. You're more than welcome to do that as well. Inhale and walk your hands all the way to the left toe, kind of turning them sideways like you're kind of in this weird runner's lunge. It's just a little way to counter pose here. So it's kind of like what we did earlier, but we're not putting our back knee on the ground. Exhale. Inhale, walk back through center. This time, walk over to the left. Nice little runner's lunge on the right here. Excuse me, on the left here. Same thing we did in our sequence. We're just not dropping that back knee. So we're basically already warmed up for this. Notice I kind of like to press forward with my heel. Press off my toes. Exhale, reset, come back through center. Deep breath here. And meet me seated on your mat. So as promised, we will move into our Supine Asana, which literally just means laying on your back. I would encourage, if necessary, if any of this doesn't feel good for you, feel free to take something that feels better. There are also several poses that I won't be cueing, just in the nature of trauma-sensitive yoga. Some of these poses can be super triggering, and I just want to be aware of what I am facilitating for you. So the next 3 poses we'll do are going to end out our class. We'll do figure 4, we'll do a simple twist, and then a bridge pose. If any of these aren't feeling like your jam, if they're not feeling great, if instead you're like, you know what, this actually is really triggering for me, I would encourage you to take some time away, to step back, and to do something that feels better. Quite literally, if that means you take a 20-minute Shavasana, that is totally fine by me. That being said, when I cue figure 4, I'm a pretty visual person, but I like to actually cue through that speaking. So if you can't follow along with it, if it's not feeling right in your body, you're more than welcome to just take it out completely. Between figure 4s, I'll cue going into a tiny ball, which is literally just like what you do when you're a kid. When you reach in and kind of tuck your head, curl your feet up, like a little tiny ball. So that's what that cue is. Finally, we'll end with our Shavasana, which will be a nice long 10-minute guided meditation. Again, if that's not for you, the beauty of YouTube live stream, you can click goodbye at any time and I won't be upset, mostly because I can't see you from right here. That being said, let's go down. Let's meet in a nice little pose in our back, unless of course there's something else you'd like to explore. A pose that is in most yoga classes that I won't be teaching is Happy Baby. Again, it's just because of the philosophy of being a little bit triggering, not exactly what we're trying to portray. But if that's something you'd like to take, you're more than welcome to. I will meet you on your back. So first, I just want to start us in this little tiny ball, just kind of rocking and rolling from side to side. Just massaging over the spine. And exhale, I'm going to plant my feet against my mat so that my knees are at a nice bend here. This is just a kind of setup. This is a setup for later on in our bridge pose, but for right now, this is a great way to set up for figure 4. So from here, let's start on the right side, just like we've been doing all through class. We definitely kept that theme. So I'm going to inhale and pull my right knee close to my chest here. Exhale, I'm going to cross my right ankle over my left thigh. So if I were to straighten my left leg, it would literally look like an upside down figure 4. If that feels good for you and you feel like, you know what, that's exactly where I want to stay, perfect. If you'd like to go a little bit further in this pose, feel free to reach underneath the left thigh and extend that left leg. Definitely a supine pose, definitely less of a working pose. This is more of a stretching pose. Also, I want to offer the opportunity to be doing this seated. You can easily do a figure 4 pose seated. It's very, very simple. A couple deep breaths here. Noticing how we already did the movement, we already did the work. This is now just letting our body kind of enjoy it and enjoy the process. You might start to notice that your breath really slows down. You might start to notice that your breath feels less held onto. I always notice that at this point in class. One of the great things about doing a supine pose is that natural diaphragmatic breathing really jumps in at this point. Exhale to unwind, pull your legs in, tiny ball, rock and roll just side to side. Coming back down, planting those feet against the mat. This time we'll do the left side. So I'm going to pull my left leg in towards my chest, nice big squeeze here. Exhale, cross it over my right thigh. If this feels good, fantastic. If you want to go a step further, feel free to reach under that right thigh. Extend the right leg, maybe point the toe. Wherever you are, notice how this feels in your body, specifically your hamstrings. This is a really great hamstring stretch, also hip flexor. Hip flexors are important to be working those out and always making sure we're giving some love to them as we're either sitting all the time, standing all the time, or moving around, we want to make sure we get some nice balance. Finding that nice little happy medium where it's a little bit more relaxing in these poses, but you definitely feel like you're putting in just a little bit of work. Exhale to kind of unwind. Tiny ball, just like we did before. And this time we'll go into a simple twist. So we'll start by dropping our knees to the left. So quite literally as if you were in an upside down tabletop, but kind of exactly like what we just did earlier in class. You're just going to let your knees fall to the left so that you're twisting over your spine here. Nice little simple twist. If this feels good right here, that's totally fine. If you want to add something to it, you can feel free to extend your right arm and then look over the right fingertips, just like we did in Warrior Two. Deep breaths here. Find one more exhale and then reset. Same thing, pulling your knees in like a little tiny ball. Exhale, they fall over to the left side, or excuse me, the right side this time. Same thing, if this feels good, stay here. If you want a little extra, you can look over to the left fingertips here and enjoy that nice little spinal twist. Notice how this feels in your spine and still being aware of how it feels for your breath. You shouldn't be holding on to anything. You should be feeling those really full, deep belly breaths here at this point. But that can be difficult. Sometimes when we focus on that, it's a little bit more intense. A couple more breaths here. Inhale, pull the knees into the chest. Same thing, little tiny ball. And here's our bridge pose that we're coming into. Plant those feet firmly against the mat like we did before. This time, instead of pulling our knees into our chest, we're going to lift the hips up and off of the mat, kind of like a tabletop with just your lower half in it. So I'm going to press my palms flat against the mat. Sometimes I like to have my middle finger grazing the back of my heel, but that's just a me choice. That doesn't necessarily help with alignment or anything. Inhale, lifting my thighs and my hips off of the mat. Exhale. Probably stay for a few breath sequences here. Another way to make this a little bit more restorative is to sneak a block under your sacrum and kind of enjoy that sensation as well. Either way, it is up to you. Exhale, let it go. Maybe you counter pose with a nice little tiny ball. Wherever you are, allowing yourself some grace. Last time, we'll plant those feet. On your next inhalation, lift those hips off of the mat. Maybe clasp your palms underneath you to kind of open up through the shoulders and through the chest. Not holding on to our breath here, just finding a natural, even rhythm. Exhale, let it go. Tiny ball to counter pose one last time. And this is the point in class where I offer you any pose you'd like to do that we didn't touch on, anything that I didn't cue, anything that your body is really asking for, you are more than welcome to take at this point. If you think, ooh, it would feel really good if I did another supine pose, you're more than welcome. If you are someone who wants to do some type of inversion, that's totally fine. Remembering that an inversion can be as simple as a downward facing dog, technically. Whatever feels good in your practice, whatever you'd like to do, please indulge yourself for these last few minutes before we go into Shavasana. In about 2 minutes, I'll meet you on the mat in whatever Shavasana posture feels good for you. For me, I like to be seated kind of crisscross, just so that you can hear me better as I talk you through it. I will give you about a moment of silence in Shavasana. Otherwise, I do like to do kind of a moving guided Shavasana. I find it's a little bit easier to hang on to, especially when I'm in class, and even more so when I'm teaching class. Some ideas for poses we didn't get into, if you'd like to, could be a nice little chair pose to kind of fire up through the thighs, maybe an eagle-armed chair pose, a little bit of an extra something there. Maybe you'd like to do a little crow pose just to kind of work your arms. Again, that's not something I'll be demonstrating today, but that is something you are more than welcome to indulge. Remembering your breath, no matter what pose you're jumping into. Remembering to be kind to yourself and focus less on what it looks like and more on how it feels. Give it one more minute. A nice restorative posture, if you're looking for one, is Waterfall Pose. Super easy. You can essentially lean back and put your sacrum on top of a block so that your feet are quite literally just dangling in the air, which can feel really good, very, very restorative, a great way to end class. I'll give it, like I said, one more minute. And I'll start walking us through a nice little Shavasana. As you're preparing yourself for Shavasana, keep in mind what feels good for you. If you'd like to do a little fish pose or a little restorative pose, either or, whatever feels the best, keep that in mind. Shavasana does not always look the same for every single person. I prefer to have a Shavasana that is on my back. Sometimes I go into a Baddha Konasana, which is a little bit different. That's when you kind of like butterfly your legs. But it really is up to you, whatever feels best. As you're settling into Shavasana, I would encourage you to grab socks, a sweatshirt, a bolster, a blanket, whatever is feeling really good for your body. As you do start to cool down, noticing what our body is asking for, remembering that sometimes we can do that. You're welcome to close your eyes and drop into the meditation. If that is a little bit too much for you, if you feel like you just can't quite close your eyes, I'd encourage you to use the breathing exercise we did earlier, where you rubbed your hands together to create friction and then closed off one of your senses. So this afternoon when I started class, I encouraged us to focus on being present and also letting it go, which is interesting because if you think about it, it's kind of an oxymoron. You can't be present, but also just be like, I'll let it go. So if we think about that in our human brain that likes to overthink, what does that look like? For me, it kind of looks like, oh man, I had a really bad shift at work. And, I was present there and I was able to help as many people as I could, but now it's 8 p.m. and I'm going to relax, keep it out of my mind. The big thing to focus on there is not the piece about not caring about it, because it very much is caring about it. But the point in the boundary where we say, you know what, this isn't going to take up any more of my mental space. I once had a yoga teacher who said, if it's not going to matter 5 years from now, try not to let it matter for even 5 minutes. I would actually turn that down a little. I would say maybe 5 seconds instead. But I think as humans, we're thinkers. So 5 minutes seems pretty spot on. As you're sinking into your Shavasana, notice if you're feeling supported. Notice if you're feeling fidgety, if your fingers and toes are wanting to move a little bit. Noticing what part of your body is telling you what. Maybe you're laying on your back and your back is like, oh my gosh, I needed this. Or maybe your hamstrings are talking to you and they're saying, that was a really intense pose. Let's take it easy for the rest of the night. whatever that looks like. Remembering that the practice of yoga, which is quite literally means to yoke, as in to bring together, that's our mind and our body. And unfortunately, we live in a world of nothing if not separateness. So, you're in a fitness class and you hear instructors say, get out of your head, get out of your head. When in reality, that's kind of the biggest part of yoga, is to get into your head. That being said, it's not always a fun place to be. It's being aware of that. Always offering the adjustment of wiggling fingers and toes if you're feeling like this is too much, if you're feeling overwhelmed, that anxiety starts to creep in. As an idea, you can kind of think of your thoughts that are passing by as clouds. You're not really grabbing onto any of them. You're not really sitting with them. You're just kind of watching them go by. Maybe like an ocean or a tide, like a wave. You're not really staking too much on it. You're not expecting it to stay around forever. You're just kind of enjoying the ride, right? Focusing more on your breath here. Those diaphragmatic breaths, that breath that you find at the end of the night when you're headed to bed and you're laying on your back. That gentle inhale and exhale as you see your belly rise and fall. That is kind of the goal in all of yoga. That being said, it's very hard to do, and it feels pretty natural when you're lying down, but when you're standing up in a crowd, it can kind of look like you're about to hyperventilate or something. Giving some grace to that, and even more so giving grace to if you weren't able to do that throughout class. If this is the first time that you're able to do that, remembering that that's okay too. Coming back to the intention of presence and letting go. Wondering, how can I cultivate that for the new year? How can I be present in my passion? How can I show up in my life every day, but also focus on letting things go when they're no longer serving me? I once had a teacher who asked, when you're talking, ask yourself, who is the beneficiary? Who is benefiting from this? And I think it's made me a much more succinct person. But if we're thinking about our lives, we're thinking about our actions, who is the beneficiary? That is the question. It's very easy to get caught in that trap of being selfish rather than selfless. Maybe that's something we can focus on going into 2022. Starting to bring yourself back to the present moment. If you are still on your back, you can roll onto one side or the other. I usually roll onto my left side, curling my legs in that little tiny ball, but this time on my side, like a baby, kind of just waking up for the first time for the day. Taking a few seconds to come to a seated position facing me, if that feels good. You can also just stay in your Shavasana if that feels good for you. Totally 100% up to you. And once you're facing towards me, I'll just offer just a nice little intention to end our class and to end 2020. So I'd like to say thank you for all of you for flowing with me. And I hope that 2022 is magnificent and maybe just a little bit kinder than 2021 was. That being said, Namaste. If you'd like to follow along with my yoga journey, you can follow me on Instagram. My name is Julie Does Yoga. I'm always teaching at the Hand Start Center. I love this organization, and big shout out to Boston Public Library for hosting this the second year in a row. If you're also having one of those moments where you are looking back on your year, let's try to be proud of ourselves too, okay? I hope to see you soon, and with any questions, feel free to reach out. Like I said, Julie Does Yoga on Instagram. You're more than welcome to message with anything that comes up. Thank you so much. Happy 2022.